Earthquake. I feel it. Oh my God.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tabitha with Tabs on Tap. Hope you guys all had a good evening. And, that was that 7.0 earthquake yesterday in Northern California. They were so lucky where that earthquake was, just off the coast. Had it been a little bit further inland, there would have been massive destruction. A 7.0 is a huge scale of an earthquake, of course. Good morning, Karen. And so when I saw that report coming through, first it said 6.6, then it said 7.3, and then I think they might have settled with 7.0. I'm not really sure exactly, but of course we had that tsunami warning all the way down to San Francisco. Someone I know on Facebook commented that I think they are in Oregon, and the warnings came up all the way over into their area for a tsunami. And they weren't very worried because, as they stated, it would have to go up over the mountain range to get to them. But it could have but certainly been a very significant earthquake. Very, very lucky that didn't happen. Good morning, Allison. And yes, I have a new background today. I'm running a couple minutes late, nothing unusual there. I was trying to adjust, all of my surroundings. I am one of those people. I am not a morning person. I kid you not, 5 minutes ago, I had no makeup on. 1 minute ago, I still had my pajamas on. I had to hurry up and change clothes and rush back here and get my things straightened out. And I've been up since 4 a.m., really almost since 3:30 a.m. But I'm always looking for the news. When I come on the show, I always want to make sure I have the latest news, the latest on all fronts. So that way, when we talk and have a discussion about different topics, that hopefully it is the most up to date discussion that we can possibly have. Colonel Joe Adams joining us here shortly at 8 a.m. from the Washington Guard. Not wait to talk to Colonel Joe Adams this morning. There's so many things that not only we need to talk about, but so many different things that I hope that he can touch base on. Obviously, the world is crazy. We say this every day, the world has gone mad, and it's true. It absolutely has gone mad. We're gonna talk a little bit more about Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, and the shooting death of Brian Thompson, just because there's new information continuously being released. And someone posted on my Facebook page, they're like, why are we talking about this? People are killed every day. We're talking about it because this is just a really wild, crazy scenario. United Healthcare is a terrible company, quite honestly. It really is. They're really bad. They're probably the worst of the worst when it comes to insurance companies. And I don't want to see anyone's death be taken lightly. This man, regardless of who he was and who he worked for, it was a human like the rest of us. And he had a family. He and his wife were separated, by the way, when the shooting occurred. And we're going to get into that in a little bit further detail here in a little bit. We might not get to all of those details until after Colonel Joe Adams has joined us. There's a lot going on with that case, a lot of new information. I do expect an arrest very soon, sooner rather than later, unless I'm going to throw that plot twist in there later, unless, and there is a big unless behind that. So that's something we're going to get into. I want to talk about some updates in Syria. There's some things going on there that are just heartbreaking and sad, and I'm very angry about it. This morning when I woke up, I saw that the terrorists have not only they, of course, control the main highway through Syria, but they're taking over region by region and, of course, creating destruction along the way. And it's heartbreaking, and we're funding it. That's your money. That's my money. We're paying for innocent civilians to be killed, all in a quest for what? Oil and grain. That's what we're doing over there in Syria. We want their oil and grain. So we're paying terrorists, of course, to oust Assad so that they can take over the country. Is that really what we want to do? According to our government, yes. And it's sad to say that, we're not the good guys. We, the people, are the good guys. Our government, the people who run this country, They truly are the terrorists of the world. And that has to change. And I think that's what this movement is towards Donald Trump is it's a change. We have to change. And I do think that's what we're doing. And that's what this entire election is about. It's a bigger story, a much bigger story. And, that's something I want to touch base on also. We can hopefully talk to Colonel Joe Adams, see what he thinks about what's going on in Syria. I want to talk about Tucker Carlson's interview in Russia. You guys have probably seen the interview with their defense minister, Sergei Lavrov. If you haven't seen the interview already, it's about an hour and 20 minutes long. I shared it onto my X or my Telegram channel. I'm going to share it on X, but it's out there. It'll be very easy to find. I want to touch base on some of that. If you see me looking distracted, it's because I don't know what's going on right now, but my laptop sounds like a jet engine getting ready to take off, and I have absolutely no idea why. But it's really loud, and I'm looking around like, what is that? Is it something inside? I have a headset in, so I'm like, is it something inside, something outside? Hopefully, you guys can't hear it because it is loud. So I want to talk about that. There's a lot of things I want to get to. Canada, they have lost their minds. I have so many friends that are originally from Canada who live here in the United States. A lot of them, of course, in the hockey industry. And this is so crazy. Canada has banned 324 different types of weapons, different types of firearms in Canada. And guess what they're doing? They're confiscating all of these firearms of Canadian citizens and they're sending them to Ukraine. That is not a joke. I'm not making it up. It is true. It is absolutely true. They're confiscating the guns of Canadian citizens and sending these firearms over to Ukraine. It is the craziest thing I've ever heard. It reminds me of that movie Idiocracy. It's like, how much dumber can you get? But yet, here we are talking about it because it's true. It's crazy. It really is. I keep reading these stories every day. There's a lot of things I don't even talk about with you all because I'm like, this is so stupid. There's so many stupid things out there. That is one of them. And guess what? You know what? We just narrowly saved ourselves from exactly that. Just narrowly saved ourselves. A couple of things I want to get into before Colonel Joe Adams joins us. I'm going to talk about these things in greater detail after Joe leaves the show, but I want to touch base on them now because I'm really hoping that he can kind of join in and talk to us about some of these things as well. Something that is on my mind that we don't necessarily have to talk to Colonel Joe Adams about it, but I do want to talk about it at some point down the line, and we're gonna keep an eye on this. But the UK announced that they've bought 5 million doses of bird flu vaccine, avian flu vaccine, because they expect it to be the next pandemic. And if we have time today, I'm going to play a little short video of all of the viruses that are coming up. And how can you predict a virus outbreak? But that's exactly what's happening. So I'm going to play that for you here in a little bit because it's very important. Anytime we start seeing these different countries purchasing vaccines and gearing up towards some pandemic, I think we all have a little bit to worry about because we all know exactly what that means. We know what they're trying to do to us. They're going to do anything they can to keep us down. And by the way, Karen, I'm happy to see that you're on X, Allison on YouTube. YouTube is a little bit more friendlier to me than Facebook is. I don't even know if I can stream on Facebook today. I turned it on, but I'm not sure. Yesterday I got in trouble. I played that video of the shooting of Brian Thompson, and they determined that that was far too risky. I mean, it's actual news. They're playing it on every news channel, but they considered it to be too violent for Facebook content. So I'm restricted there. We'll see what happens and how that all plays out. It's probably not going to be good for me. But you know what? Do I even care? And the answer is no. No, I don't care. Don't care at all. And so Tucker Carlson, also a victim, of course, of censorship, right? Also a victim of censorship. Tucker Carlson, he had this interview, again, an hour and 20 minutes long. Hopefully we can touch base on a couple of these things with Colonel Joe Adams. And, some of the main points to come out of this interview, you really need to see it for yourself. And I will tell you that I feel so validated because I come on here and spew an awful lot of stuff. I talk about Russia, Ukraine a lot. I talk about what's going on in Syria a lot and around the world. And that's what this interview was about. They really talked about some really good points of what's taking place, not only between Russia and Ukraine and Russia and the United States, but what's happening in Syria, what's happening in the country of Georgia, what's happening all around the world and how it all intertwines. And I was really happy to hear the interview because I'm like, gosh, that's the same things that we talk about. They answered a lot of the questions and validated a lot of the points that we talk about. And I was very happy about that because I'm like, okay, I'm glad that Tucker Carlson agrees with everything that we're talking about here on this show. And good morning, Jerry Hoover. And, again on X, I must be restricted more than I thought on Facebook because I don't have a single Facebook comment, but that's okay, perfectly fine. And so some of the highlights was that Tucker was he kept asking Lavrov, are we in a war? He had to ask him a couple different times, are we in a war with Russia? And what he ended up getting out of Lavrov is it is a hybrid war, and of course it's a war because guess what? We're funding Ukraine. We're sending them weapons, which are, by the way, ending up, excuse me, in the hands of terrorists, as we all know. We know that, don't we? And that's proven even further. But it is a hybrid war. While we are not bombing Russia, Russia is not bombing us here in the United States. The situation in Ukraine would have ended a long time ago had we, the United States, and had NATO countries stopped funding Ukraine, largely us, 183 billion. We're getting ready to send them several more $1 million. And of course, the war would have been over probably on day 2 had we not jumped in. But we did jump in. And so now the blood is on our hands, isn't it? It's on our hands. So that's something to think about. And let's see, Jerry Hoover, you're not on Facebook. Well, oh well, no big surprise there. And if they allow me, I can share the show there later, but I'm not surprised. I got in a lot of trouble yesterday for showing that video, which is crazy because why would I get in trouble for showing something that's in the news? Why? Why are we restricted in such a degree on Facebook? And it probably doesn't help that then I went and talked trash about them afterwards. Then whenever those fact checkers, they probably see that and they're like, screw her, we're just going to take her off. So something else that came out of the Tucker Carlson interview with Lavrov is that, no one is contacting him from the Biden administration. He says he hasn't talked to anyone in the Biden administration. Now we know Putin has a couple of times, but Lavrov, of course, he's their defense minister. No one has contacted him. No one has reached out to him. He hasn't spoken to anyone. I think he said since Biden stepped into office. So you can take a look at that and see that with your own eyes. It's crazy. Of course, they reiterated they want peace and diplomacy. And they talked about the Oreshnik missile, just as we always say that it is here. The Oreshnik missile was a huge warning. And he asked that, hey, people need to wake up and take this warning to heart. We're trying to tell you, we're warning you that we will not lose. And he reiterated, we will not lose. Russia will not lose this war. And they are willing to do whatever it takes to win. Now, we've known that. We've talked about it for a long time. I don't think the majority of Americans understand that. We are going to be on the losing side of this. There's no way about it. And the other thing that I thought was probably the most important of everything that Lavrov stated, and that was the sense of security that we often have here in the United States and how our media and our government, they really downplay world events to us. We live in a little cocoon, a little shell, and most of us don't understand the true threat that we're under. And that's something that Lavrov, kind of goes out of his way to make a point of, that he heard a speech by John Kirby, where John Kirby was explaining to Americans on live television that, if we end up in some type of situation with Russia and nuclear weapons become involved, that our allies in Europe are probably going to face some significant problems. And Lavrov's like, wait a minute, what do you mean? Your allies in Europe? What about you, the United States? And he made it very clear that we, the United States, if nuclear weapons become involved, we will see an attack here in the United States. It's not like they're going to just skirt around us, which none of us if you're watching this show, you know that wasn't the case anyway. I can remember when I was on Cancel This, Vic and I used to argue endlessly. Vic Faust, of course, my endearing former co-host, because he would always say, we're never going to have a war in our country. We're going to prevent that at all costs. It'll never happen here. And I always say never, because we are not immune in this country. We are not immune to troops on the ground in our country. We're not immune to missiles striking our country. We're not immune to nuclear weapons striking our country. And I think that was the biggest take I had out of that entire interview was exactly that. We are not immune. We are not immune. We here in the United States, if our government, if the deep state keeps pushing this war with Russia, they will not lose. They are willing to use nuclear weapons against us here at our mainland, in our own country, against American, probably infrastructure, not the American people. But when it comes to a nuclear weapon, or even if it's not nuclear warhead, what if it's the Oreshnik missile? They would take out all of our military bases in a flash. We would lose thousands of lives, maybe hundreds of thousands of lives. So we cannot continue to think that it cannot happen here when we have the Ministry of Defense talking to Tucker Carlson one-on-one saying, yes, it absolutely can happen because we will not lose. And we will do whatever it takes to win. And that includes you in the United States. Better wake up, because yes, it can happen in your country also. So don't think it can happen. I think we all need to wake up. We all need to be prepared for the inevitable, isn't it? Because what's going to happen? Are we going to back down after all of that money we're giving to Ukraine, that we're continuing to give to Ukraine? Are we just going to back down and step aside and say that's not going to happen? And even Trump himself has said that he's going to do his best to work with Russia. And I do think that if Trump can come to term, if he can be inaugurated without something crazy happening to us all beforehand, I do think that he will work out a diplomatic answer. I really do. Because we know that Russia wants the Donbass region. They want to keep Crimea. They're about 35% into Ukraine, and they want to keep that area. And we already know that Trump is open to them keeping that area. We already know that Zelensky's lost this war. He has lost this war. There's been so much information coming out on Zelensky, his people. He's got 16% of the vote in Ukraine. The people have completely lost faith in them. He has destroyed their country. He has leveled a good portion of the country. A million soldiers lost in Ukraine. Now they're calling up the sick, the elderly, the defenseless, trying to draft 18-year-olds. He has lost this war. But are we going to allow the war to be lost? That's the question we have to answer, is are we going to allow the war to be lost? Under Biden, no, we won't. They will continue to escalate. I think the biggest question is will they continue to escalate to the point of creating a war before Trump is inaugurated? And then we have to look at what's taking place in Syria. It is heartbreaking what's happening over in Syria, and hopefully Colonel Joe Adams with the Washington Guard can touch base on that with us. He'll be joining us here in just about 3 minutes, because what's happening in Syria, if you guys, I know I talk about Syria quite a bit. And if any of you were listening to my shows in the past, in 2013, 14, 15 and up, I have really focused on Syria quite a bit. I'm very familiar with their politics and Assad and, the different factions that are within Syria. And I would almost consider it a specialty, because I've focused on it so much over the years. And we've always known that the United States has sponsored the terrorists. We, the United States, always end up sponsoring terrorists. The Muslim community is divided in half. There's the Sunni Muslims and there's the Shiite Muslims. And 99% of all terror groups in the world are Sunni Muslims. That absolutely does not mean that all Sunni Muslims are terrorists, because that's absolutely not true. These terrorists kill more of their own people than they do anyone else. But we, the United States, we have funded them, we have supplied them, we have trained them. They've turned against us every time. We instead of in Syria, when we finally started winning under Donald Trump, not under Obama, we started finally winning the war against terrorism between the United States, Russia, and the Syrian government. We pushed them up into Idlib. They gave them safe passage. That was the deal that was worked out. These people were not killed. They were not put in prisons. They were given safe passage into Turkey and up to that northern region called Idlib. Well, eventually what happened is we want to oust Assad under, of course, the Biden regime. And through that, we have ramped up our funding, us and the UK. We have ramped up our funding of terrorists. They are literally terrorists. Look up Al Nusra. They are literally terrorists. And we supply them with money. We train them. And now they're taking over and they're stronger than they have been in a very long time. And Russia is fighting with the Syrian government, Iran fighting with the Syrian government against, guess who? Against our proxy terrorists. It's a crazy situation, and I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know what we're going to do to fix it, but I will tell you what, everyone is sick of everyone is just sick over world politics and everything that we're doing from the United States, from our shadow government, from our deep state. The world's tired of it. I think they all welcome, Donald Trump into the mix because they know he is going to do his best to create peace. He will not support these terrorists. Obama did. Trump, he ended that program. It was called Timber Sycamore. You can look it up. And then Biden restarted it. So that is such a big deal that's taking place right now. I'm going to bring Colonel Joe Adams in to join us. Let's see here. As soon as he is ready, we will get him in. And I know I told him this morning, I'm like, I know my sound's always a little off, but I am going to get it straightened out. We're going to get him in and we should be able to hear him just fine. And let's see here. Yep.
That's in there. Huh? I get nothing. Hey, good morning, Tabitha. How you doing? How am I supposed to respond to that? Tabitha, I cannot hear you. All right.
We can hear you. So
I got you.
How are you doing this morning?
Good. The cat's ready. He's all set. So.
Well, we're always happy to see him. That's for sure.
Too.
Obviously joined with Colonel Joe Adams of the Washington Guard. I didn't have a show on Wednesday, so happy to see you here today. I just want to let you know up front, Colonel Adams, that we are not on Facebook today. I got kicked off yesterday for playing that video of the shooter in New York City. So what can I say,
So the media can play it, but you can't.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Interesting. Anyway, you want to talk about the shooter first?
Yes. You know what? Let's jump into that because I'm curious of your opinion. I don't think he's a professional. I don't know if he's somebody with a grudge or somebody that was just a low level, maybe professional. What are your thoughts?
Well, I know exactly. I appear as professional witness in shooting cases, self-defense cases, knife against gun cases in our courts, and the reason is, one night my wife and I sat down and tried to figure out how many rounds of ammunition that I have spent over the years. And when I say spent, I mean fired, in practicing for competitions and combat. And we figured that I fired at least 1,500,000 rounds in practice. So yeah, I think I'm a professional. In the 80s, I was classified as one of the top 10 shooters in the world. So yeah, and I represented the United States in the Top Gun shooting championships, and of course I won. But anyway, so the shooter, as soon as I saw it on TV, first of all, his posture is totally wrong. He's holding the gun wrong. That's not the way a professional shooter would react. But here's the clue about being an amateur. When he brought the gun up to shoot the man, he brought the gun up and didn't go straight to the target. He was looking at the target. You never look at the target when you're shooting for accuracy. You look at the front sight blade. So what he did was, and I'll demonstrate, he brings the gun up and then down. A professional would never do that. because when you bring that gun up, you're going right for the front sight blade, not cowboy style. So that told me that the kid's just an amateur. He might have spent some time at the range, but again, his gun malfunction. I would never carry a weapon that I hadn't fired at least 500 times without a malfunction. No
Right.
way. No way. Impossible.
Now, he
So,
cleared it pretty quick. He cleared the jam pretty quick and carried on.
yeah, people go and buy these guns and they look for I don't shop for weapons for price. I shop for quality. All of my guns are custom made, by the way. I would never shoot a box. The only good box gun out there, when I say a box gun, that's a gun that you buy at the gun shop right out of the box. There's only one gun that's reliable, and that would be a CZ, probably a CZ 75 9mm. Other than that, put 500 rounds to it, go to a professional gunsmith, get it tuned up, and then become reliable. But yeah, this kid's if he's not an amateur, then he was trained wrong, period. And his posture was wrong. No. So I don't have to look any further than his posture and his delivery of the weapon to the target to tell you he's an amateur. At least in my world. Well,
Yeah,
I don't know about the hitman world out there, but maybe they're desperate for people. But this kid, he's in the wrong profession if he's a hitman. And
I agree. Yeah, Colonel Adams, the first thing I thought when I saw it, at first I thought, well, he's got the suppressor. I thought, well, maybe it was a hired hit. But there's two parts to this, and I'm going to get more into all of this later. I don't want to bug you with all the minor details that you already know. But there's two parts to this. One is, and my bigger questions are when it comes to this particular shooter is he went to Starbucks. He had a bottle of water. I haven't heard anything more about the coffee cup. He had 2 power bars. He had a burner phone. So he left the burner phone at the scene. He threw the bottle of water in the trash and the power bar wrappers. They're analyzing those for DNA now. They have a fingerprint, but it was smudged on the water bottle. They cannot use it. I don't know if they got fingerprints off of the phone. If so, they haven't stated it. My question is, and not only that, but this guy was in town for several days. He checked into a hotel or a hostel on November 30th. He took a bus from Atlanta into the area. He's been there for several days. And then we find out he was actually there earlier. He made an earlier trip to New York to kind of, they believe, scouting it out. So my questions are, A, why does he need a burner phone? Who's he talking to on a burner phone? And 2, why was he there prior? Why did he know that Brian Thompson was going to be there that far ahead of time? To me, that tells me it's an inside job.
That's the key question. How did he know he's going to be at a certain place, certain time? I guess the investigation will uncover that. Yeah, but he knew. He knew exactly.
He did know exactly.
It'd be interesting if that executive was in town the first time the shooter was in town. But anyway, we'll find out. But anyway, he's a low budget hitman. That's all I can say.
That's why it's so hard for me to wrap my head around it. I'm like, he's obviously not a professional, because a professional would never leave DNA evidence behind, wouldn't appear on camera so many times. So I know he's not a professional, but yet at the same time, who's he talking to? Why does he have a burner phone? Did he use that burner phone for somebody to communicate, to say, hey, he's on his way out, and then all of a sudden he's over on the side of the building waiting for the guy? It has to be some type of inside job. Maybe one of, Brian Thompson, when he cashed out his stock options illegally, by the way, it wasn't just him. It was the entire executive team. And it does make me wonder if somebody in that executive team is involved. And, and I'm not trying to accuse anyone. I'm just curious, like anyone else.
Of course, he had insider information about where to shoot and who to shoot. But other than that, I don't know. But my first thought was, somebody's upset with the insurance industry. So anyway, but who isn't, right?
Who isn't? Right. Especially United Healthcare, Colonel Adams, they're the worst of the worst. They use an AI program to go through claims. They scan through the claims. It has a 90% error rate. There were 2 people who died exactly a year ago, by the way. And the families of those 2 people sued United Healthcare because their algorithms on this ridiculous AI robot denied their claims that doctors had approved, and that resulted in 2 deaths.
Well, it'd make you want to shoot somebody. So anyway, uh, the thing I'm impressed with some of the footage of the guy was uh, he's a cool operator. I mean, he was there, he's smiling, uh, backpack, of course, change of clothes, whatever, keeping all his personal items on him. So, but if you ever want to put a video together, an instruction video of how not to be an assassin, he should star in the movie. Anyway,
Exactly. And later on in the show, I'm gonna have a plot twist, for everyone, and see if maybe I can get anybody on board with that. Now, Colonel Adams, as you know, the world is literally on fire. There's so much craziness going on. We have this situation. I don't know if you had an opportunity to see Tucker Carlson's interview with Sergei Lavrov, the defense minister, of course, of Russia, or
yeah.
obviously everything that's taking place in the country of Georgia, over in Syria. Obviously, us, the United States, backing terrorists. We know we did because Obama, had no choice but to admit to it, and we've continued that plan.
Obama, yeah. Uh, so I saw yesterday where the when they build these presidential libraries, that's all by private funds and donations, and for the most part. And Obama started planning his entire last year of his regime, his library. So I made a comment the other day to somebody that I've got the perfect location for Biden's presidential library, and it should be an extension of an additional building at Leavenworth for his presidential library. But the donors have backed off now, and so there is no plan at this point in time for a presidential library for Joe Biden, whereas all other presidents, the entire last year of their administrations, not the last 2 years, if they did 2 terms, was about the library. So people don't want to fund this guy, and I don't blame them either. I mean, I would never. This guy's ridiculous. And I also noticed that how the media is kind of. I'm starting to watch CNN News and MSNBC and Morning Joe just because to watch how fast since the election everything has changed. I actually saw on CNN the other day referring to one of the people, the commentators, referring to the Biden crime family.
Really?
Yeah, he actually talked about the Biden crime family and giving this guy time. But the whole media has changed overnight because the election showed exactly about the American patriots and the citizens how they really feel about the administration and what's been going on. And they realize they've been lied to the entire time. And the media has been exposed that they bought into it, except Whoopi Goldberg. She's still an idiot. But this entire time we've been lied to. Now, I knew we were being lied to. The Washington Guard knew we were being lied to. But I used to watch CNN and MSNBC just to see how demented these people were. And now they realize how they look. And it's changed. It's actually entertaining.
It has changed, and it's in Colonel Adams. It's going to continue to change because these news channels, if you can call them news, entertainment channels, liberal entertainment channels, like MSNBC or CNN, they've been funded by the Biden administration in the same way that they were funded by the Obama administration. They're funded by the deep state. Now, some of that funding will not go away because we have the Soroses of the world who are going to continue to fund these liberal news stations. But you know what? They're not going to be receiving directives from the government any longer. The Trump administration is not going to be directing them what they can and can't say. So I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what direction they're going to turn in, but I hope that many of them have woken up. I think some are too lost. They'll never come around, but I hope some of them wake up.
But they're changing their story whether they believe it or not. I'm sure they're punching up their resume and getting ready to be booked, but I was shocked at some of the salaries that these clowns were making. I mean, that's just that in itself is criminal. But anyway, haha, we won, you lost. So this should be interesting. But the biggest hurdle that Trump's going to have right off the get-go will be the mass deportation, and you have to stand back and what would that look like? Because nobody's talking about the cartels. Now, the cartels funding a lot of this stuff privately, bringing their people in, and they've been bringing in weapons for years. into this country, a lot of weapons. And so eventually this mass deportation is going to come across cartel territory. What are you going to do then?
It's a good point because, obviously the cartels, that's a multi-billion-dollar industry, bringing illegals into the United States, bringing drugs, bringing weapons. And when we cut down border crossings, when we start sending people back, guess what? That really does a lot of damage to the economy of the cartels, which, by the way, run a lot of Mexico, in El Salvador and Guatemala. All that money goes back to these different countries in South and Central America. So what do you think is going to happen? Do you think that we're going to have a cartel war? Or do you think the cartels are going to fight harder to keep these illegals, coming in and out? Because they don't make money. If they can't transport illegals, drugs, and weapons into this country, they don't have any money.
Well, I've said it before that the reason you brought the guns is for a turf war within the boundaries of the United States. But I don't see how this mass deportation thing is going to happen without some kind of skirmish or small civil unrest involving the cartels, because they're going to maintain their turf. They've got people. In fact, if you want protection, and they've got their own little areas they operate in, to go in and get those illegals and get them out of there. And that's another thing too. The media don't realize that they've been brainwashed by saying migrants and undocumented people. You've got to get back and explain exactly who these people are. They're illegal aliens. Every single one of them in this country is a criminal just by doing that. Stop using the word immigrant. These are illegals.
Exactly. And, Colonel Adams,
when you say immigrant, that's a whole different terminology. It's a whole different definition.
Well, it is,
and
that's what the liberal woke term, of course, the politically correct term they want us all to use is undocumented or migrant. They don't like to use the word illegal, but I was just reading, and if we have time later on in the show, I'm going to play a video for some of the listeners here, is that we've largely been led to believe that we need these illegals into our country to work on the farms. But then we have farmers coming out now who are saying that's absolutely not true. It's not like it was 20 years ago where we have hundreds of people working on the farm. They're saying, no, we do not need illegals here on our farm. We've automated the farming industry. If we own a farm, we have AI, we have tractors that operate by themselves. We have all of these different types of technology. We no longer need hundreds of employees. And they also say that they hire groups of people legally that come here on a legal work visa to work in the farms. And when the work is done, they go back. They make a lot of money. They go back home. They don't stay here. So that's just a completely moot argument now.
Yeah, they've been doing that for decades, and they accept the fact that they did need, especially in the produce industry, migrant people to come in, and they came in legally for the most part. They had permits to come in. Anyway, that's whole changed. So we sure in the hell don't need 12 million illegals to work the farms. How about that? Right? Hey, somebody commented about my hat, infidel. Well, I just wear that hat to piss off the Muslims. Just for the record, okay? I went into a Quick Trip the other day, and of course it was ran by I don't know, some Middle Eastern lady. Hey, well, why would you wear that hat? And I said, well, isn't that how you refer to us as infidels? I just put it on the hat. That's all. It's my favorite hat. So if you want to piss off some workers at Quick Trip, just wear one of these hats and get their reaction. So in your face, Muslims. Hey, and speaking of that, this Hegseth guy.
Oh yes.
Well, I'm going to tell you, tactically speaking, I'm military, period. All this other politics stuff, I just see how it infringes upon what I predict. Hegseth is exactly who we need for that job. Trump didn't nominate him or pick him because he wasn't the right person. Now, these people that Trump has brought in to want to be in his cabinet, and these people he's nominated for these positions, those are shock troops. These are not temporary people. These are people, high energy, motivated patriots to go in there and do their job now. Hegseth's advantage over other people is, first of all, he's an enlisted man. Without the enlisted personnel in the military, we're screwed. So anyway, not that's right. He was a low officer. Anyway, he went through training.
Yeah, I like him, Colonel Adams. I do like him. I think he's a great fit for the role. I don't know though if he's going to make it through the nomination. And the reason why that email that his mother wrote is so damaging. I know she came back and apologized, but her apology was that he's changed since then. So
Yeah.
this is his own mother stating that he's this really awful person and all of these terrible things that he's done, and alcoholism and cheating on his wife 5 times. And she says, of course, now he's changed, and he says he's changed. Now, me personally, I don't care about someone's personal life when they're in the government or in any role. I mean, we wouldn't even be able to buy any products if we only bought products from people who have a good moral ethic code, right? I don't care about all that. I'm there for somebody to do the job the way the job needs to be done. I think it's going to be tough for him to get through.
I'm known for my leadership, my ability to lead, and I'm also known for my perception as far as the intelligence analyzing. I'll just tell you right now that somebody, and I've done real well in my life. I mean, the Marine Corps training made me a wealthy man. And people say, well, how did you invest? I said, well, I invested early as a young man, and I'm glad I spent my money and invested my money in the right way, because if I hadn't have invested that money, I would have spent all of my money on alcohol and women. And my wife knows that. So for me to, what's the saying in the Bible? He without sin cast the first stone. So they're saying these things about this man who has all of the ability to do what's necessary as a shock troop. He has been abused by the military people in charge. He knows about how they've turned into woke, the transgender crap in the military, and even putting women in combat. He knows that's wrong. Everything he says, and he's going to change and would change, is exactly what we need. So he had a problem with alcohol. Okay. I remember going to the officers' facilities, and the same people that are getting drunk every night. And I made a comment to somebody one time. I said, I think this drinking in the rear, which I mean when you're not in combat, is getting out of control. And this doctor says to me, we all drink too much. We all drink too much. I have done some things I deployed 5 times in 5 different combat situations over 21 years. And I admit, and I can give you details about when I came home a few times, I had a problem. It was just, and I can give you an example. So I was rotating out of a combat zone, had been under fire for days, and 48 hours later, after rotating out, I was back in St. Louis. And I had sponsored a softball team, Adams Raiders. Gee, surprise, surprise, right? So 48 hours later, from being almost killed and exchanging fire with the enemy, I'm at a softball game. And I sit back and I thought, wait a minute, 48 hours ago, I was killing the enemy and he was trying to kill me. And now I'm back playing softball. Now put that in your head. Now, if that don't make you act kind of weird, nothing will. And it did it more than once. I had to go back into a police bar. When I say police all hang out in different bars, and apologize to the owner on my own for acting up in his facilities the night before. When I woke up the next morning, I think that was really embarrassing. What's wrong with me? Well, what's wrong with me was I had just came back from a war and I had some problems, and alcohol does not help, believe me. But I've been there, done that. So if he did have these problems and did these things, does that make him a bad leader?
I don't think so.
Well, there's a guy called Ulysses S. Grant who stayed drunk through the entire Civil War. Does that make him a bad leader? No. Hegseth is a good man, and he's exactly what we needed for the job.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. You know, I think that he'll do a fantastic job, and I wish that it was people like us getting him into that position. You know, I'm hearing just so many things. You know, now of course the liberals will do whatever they can, and by liberals I don't mean Democrats. I mean liberals. I mean people on our own team who claim they're on our own team who are already speaking out against him. So we'll see how it plays out. I hope he makes it. I think he deserves it. I think that whatever his life was in the past, everybody has made mistakes, and that he self-admittedly, you know, he found God. He has a wife now, and he's happy, and things in his life has changed. And we all deserve a second chance. Is my opinion on that.
He's the right guy for the job. He's got I don't care what he's done. You know, nothing other than maybe pedophile or child porn. Other than that,
Oh, right. No, he's not accused of anything like that, thankfully.
no.
I wouldn't be very happy about that. But you know,
I've been in his boots, believe me, and that doesn't make me a bad leader. And
I agree.
So I sympathize with the guy. Been there, done that. How about that?
Well, I hope he makes it. We'll hope, pray, cross our fingers that he gets in, because I'm with you. I think we need him. No, Colonel Adams, you know, switching gears a little bit. What do you know? Tucker Carlson's interview, it just released late last night. You probably haven't had time to see it, and it's long. It's about an hour and 20 minutes long. But one of the main points that I took out of this interview was Sergei Lavrov very pointedly explaining to Tucker Carlson, one, that Russia will not lose this war. They will not lose. They don't care what it takes, including using nuclear weapons. And not only will they not lose this war, but he was very upset and called John Kirby reckless because he is not telling the American people that we here on our mainland, we can be attacked with a nuclear weapon, and that Russia is not going to skirt around that we are in fact in danger.
Well, I've always known that.
We have always known that. But what about the people who are listening to mainstream media? They have no idea. They have absolutely no idea.
No, because they haven't experienced it. The people in Europe have, and we haven't. And that's just the way it is. It's that simple to understand. We didn't suffer. This continent didn't suffer in World War II physically, and that is a problem. You know, they call it the greatest generation was the people in World War II, and they're very simple. Why were they so much better than the generation now? It's because all of the people in World War II went through the Depression. Right. They knew what sacrifice was. Simple as that. That's the answer right there. The greatest generation had already suffered through the Depression and made them tough. We don't have that.
You couldn't be more right.
But I don't mess with. I'm telling you, very few people in this country know about military tactics when it comes to the Russians. I do, because when I was in the war in the Balkans in '91, the military that I had to retrain, the Croatians and the Bosnians and the Herzegovinians and the Slovakians, were military trained by Russia. Tito was a satellite for Stalin. So the tactics were Russian, and I understood them. And I had a hell of a time deprogramming those people to fight a conventional warfare military style as American soldiers. So I understand them. But now understand this. The Ukrainians use the exact same tactics as the Russians. Now you've got these two third world, well, their tactics are third world. They really are. They're not the conventional warfare like the United States, and they're different kind of people. You cannot defeat the enemy unless you understand him. And so I understand their tactics, and that's what I told you months and months and months ago. And when I was one of the only people in the United States that said that Putin would go in when everybody else said he wouldn't. No, it's because you don't know how they operate. You don't know how they think. I do. I experienced it. So no, they're not going to lose. I'm telling you right now, they're not going to lose.
No, they won't. And
Whatever
how
it
far are
takes.
they willing to go?
They'll,
That's the
as
question.
far as it has to. Understand, you cannot defeat them. They will take you with them. I don't want to go. So
They've made that very clear, Colonel Adams, that they will absolutely take us with them. And they've made it very clear that in a nuclear war situation, they're not talking about tactical nuclear weapons. And that if we end up in a nuclear war situation, it's not survivable by anyone in any country. And they want to avoid that at all costs. However, our only saving grace, of course, might be Donald Trump being inaugurated and being able to work out diplomacy with Russia. They don't want NATO on their border. They do not want. They don't want Ukraine to take back the land that they have already conquered over in Ukraine. And I think Trump will work out a great plan for them. But are we going to get that far? Will Democrats allow us to get that far?
well, you know, very seldom, very seldom, the media and the strategists talk about the Black Sea. People don't understand about the Black Sea. It's a warm port, and because of the Soviet Union collapsing, by losing Ukraine and the rest of those countries and allowing them to succeed and start their own countries, he lost the Black Sea. And to defend Mother Russia on that front, he has to be able to have access to the Black Sea militarily. That's it. He doesn't care about Ukraine. It's the Black Sea. And people don't
Makes sense.
understand. They don't understand that. I do from day one. He's going for the sea. He has to. He has to regain that. And he's going to do it. And the poor Ukrainian people, Jesus. And if they want to recruit some Ukrainian soldiers, just go to the gun shows here in the area. It's Ukrainians and Russians who should be over there fighting for their country, but they don't believe in the war either. They're here.
Right. It's a tough situation. The only thing we can do is sit back, watch it play out. But then we have, all of this escalation taking place in Syria. So if we don't end up escalating to a World War III in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, it could potentially happen on the battlefield in Syria between the United States, of course, NATO, and Russia and Iran in Syria, because it's the same situation. We're in Syria, we, the United States, funding al-Nusra and a couple of these other terror groups who are, of course, trying to oust Bashar al-Assad, the legitimate president of Syria. And then we have, of course, Russia and now Iran and now Iraq. All of these countries coming together, North Korea, fighting against our proxies in Syria. So how far are we going to go on that battlefield? Because I'll tell you what, Colonel Adams, I know you know this, there are already nearly 100,000 people displaced. It is rising by the thousands every day. A humanitarian crisis. There's already reports of these United States funded terrorists murdering innocent civilians.
Well, my big concern right now is Israel, because Israel's pretty much out there on a limb by themselves. And so, in this threat by President Trump about they've got till January the 20th to do something about the hostages, especially the American hostages, how they're going to take that. Well, see, the problem with Hamas, there's two. Hamas is just not one entity. Hamas is several entities, splinter groups, and we wiped out their leadership. And so they're all running around jousting for power, and they're not talking to each other. They don't even. Those hostages are sort of wild spread and divided up. There's families over there, civilians that are holding hostages. I mean, good luck. I wish he would not have said that. But now, unless he's got a strategic, if we know where some of those people are, and we can hit them strategically and regain some of them, fine. But as far as them turning all of the hostages in by January 20th, it ain't going to happen. It's not going to happen.
No, I can't imagine it will happen. And who knows where they're holding the hostages. And like you said, they're divided up and we don't know where they're at, where they're being held. And it's not going to be as easy as just saying, those people, they don't care what Donald Trump thinks. Well, Donald Trump, he didn't fund Hamas. Obama funded Hamas. Joe Biden funds Hamas, but Trump did not. They don't care what he thinks. They don't care if he demands that they hand over the hostages. So where do you think that's going to take us when they refuse to do so?
Strategically, the one thing Donald Trump doesn't want to do is land our troops on foreign soil. And I think the avenue to do that would be to reinforce the Israeli military. I think that's his way in. Would I send in American military to do a job? Yeah, I would. He would.
You would? I don't. Yeah, I'm 100% against that.
I'd like to go, tell you the truth. So, and I know there's a lot of other special forces people out there going, hey, we'll go. If he asks for volunteers, the Marines will go, because understand this. There's a certain element of men in the military who like to fight.
Of course.
I was one of them. I couldn't wait. That's why every deployment that I took was combat. I didn't want to sit behind a desk. I didn't want to draw pay. I didn't want to work for administration, S2, S1. No. when I went to the recruiter to join the Marine Corps, I said, just give me a rifle and I'm going to go kill little short brown people. I mean, that was it. I didn't care about it. I just wanted to fight. And the reason I was that way was of my family's history. All of my ancestors and grandfather, all of the people in my family, the men, fought in a war, going back to the Indian Wars. I had to prove to myself that I was as good as my ancestors in my family. I had to get into combat. And I'll be honest with you, I was pretty good at it. So anyway, there is a certain element that would go in just because they like it. And if your listeners don't understand that, you will never understand it.
I don't understand it, but and of course I couldn't understand it, but and I'm all for doing what we must do to continue to be a sovereign nation for the freedom of our people. That's why I have the flag behind me. And I'm a lot like you, Joe. My many great great-grandfather fought in the Revolutionary War. His son fought in the Civil War. So I understand the feeling in your heart of fighting for what you believe in. But I am all about peace and diplomacy. I don't want to lose one single troop over battles that have nothing to do with us. Nothing to do with us. Yes, Israel has every right to their own sovereignty. They have every right to feel safe. What happened with Hamas, obviously, on that day on October 7th, going into Israel, was a terrorist act, and they need to pay for it. And I think they have largely paid for it. But you can't fight groups like Hamas or like these terrorists in Syria, because you know what? Every time we kill one of their leaders, guess what? Another one rises up who is just as bad, if not worse, than the other. And then look at the situation in Syria. We had all of these terrorists pushed up into the northeast region, up into Idlib, where they have been for several years. And now guess what happened during that time? Because we didn't eliminate every single one of them. We gave them safe passage. Guess what happened? That gave them more time to recruit new people, to purchase new weapons, which they're buying from Ukraine, by the way. Ukraine is selling them our weapons. We give our weapons to Ukraine. Ukraine turns around and sells them to the terrorists in Syria. This is an absolute fact. And we gave these people time to rise up. So it's like, I don't see, how can you fight groups like this? I know you have an answer. I don't have the answer. I don't know how we can win against these people. Every time we go to battle against them, we just end up making them stronger. They get more recruits, more weapons, more money. And then going over and fighting Hamas is like fighting ourselves, because under Obama and under Biden, we paid those people. We funded Hamas.
Take the gloves off. The problem with war is that somehow the politicians get involved and they always stop short. Israel right now says the only good Hamas is a dead Hamas, and they're going to wipe them out. Well, then they say, well, that's genocide. So what? So what? Take the gloves off. I mean, they can't stop. We can't let them stop. Right now, they're fighting our war for us right now and sacrificing, because this does affect the United States, the Mideast. Now, who started all this stuff? It turned sour with Obama. What do you call ISIS? The JV team? Really? The JV team? Well, What a stupid comment that was.
Yeah, he called al-Nusra moderate terrorists, and now
Yeah.
they're the people marching through Syria, killing innocent people.
If this continues, Assad's going to go into hibernation someplace, because he's closer now to losing his country and his control than he ever has been.
He's so close, Colonel Adams, so close. It's probably going to happen. I think we're going to probably end up. Well, I'm not going to say we're going to end up losing Syria to the terrorists, of course, funded by the United States, but I think Russia is willing to do what they have to do to keep that from happening. And I'm hearing talk that Russia is thinking about using their Oreshnik missile against terrorists in Syria, and if that happens, that'll change everything.
Yeah. Yep. And they're willing to do it too.
They are willing to do it.
Yep. I'm sure Assad and Putin have already put a plan together, just technical plan. So yeah, that's a mess. And we have nothing. It started in 1979 when the Shah of Iran was overthrown. That's when this started.
Yes, it is. And we've continued since then, haven't we?
Yep, 1979. When did this all start? 1979. When we let that happen. We allowed that to, when they took the embassy in 1979, of course, local police were in charge of responsibility for the perimeter of the embassy. So the weapons provided after several requests for weapons because of the street protests and things, and they knew the local police protection would abandon their ship and leave it up to the American Marines to protect the embassy. Now, me and Rocky Sickman are tight. And Rocky got captured and spent 444 days. Rocky tells me the only weapons inside the embassy to protect the embassy was a sawed-off shotgun and a .38 snub-nosed revolver. After continuously asking for internal weapons and protection to guard the embassy. The embassy was guarded with a shotgun and a snub-nosed .38. Now that's intentional.
Yes.
And it hasn't been the same since.
No, look at all the people, Colonel Adams, and I respect our military. I'm not speaking against our military. We have a fantastic, a wonderful group of folks serving in our military, and veterans like yourself, of course, who continue to provide services to our military. But it kills me to think about war, because I know, and and if you're listening to this show, that we, the United States, we are not the good guys. Our military, they're great people. They're fighting for the right reasons, and particularly because our government lies to them. But our government, the deep state, are not the good people. We go into all these countries, just like we did in Iran, just like we did in Iraq, just like we're doing in Syria now, and Libya before that. And I could go down the list and name a whole list of different countries that we have completely decimated. We've gone in and we've killed millions of their people. And then our government turns around, just like they did with Iraq. We go into Iraq and we're killing all these Iraqis and all of these terrorists. And then guess what? And then we turn around and start paying the terrorists. We tell our troops to train the same terrorists that just killed their best friend or their family members. It's such a mixed up, complex, crazy world that we have to live in.
Overall, we've got a great military.
We do have a great military.
The majority of the people are there for a reason, and it's an all-volunteer military now. The ugly word is draft. See how that's working in Ukraine and even in Russia. How they're coming here. But people don't understand why Lloyd Austin in the White House did the maneuvers they did in the military. And they recently did something to the Marines to devalue the Marines that I won't even get into. Because when I found out, I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. So all this woke and all this transgender stuff and gonna put women in combat, all these, you know what that's about? The bottom line is that's about weakening our military, and that's intentional.
Yes, it is.
Because they know the only time you can have peace is through strength. And the weaker we are, the less peace we have.
That's right. And we need war. That's what funds the war. The war machine is what funds our country, isn't it? It's what not us, the people, but of course the deep state. Why do you think you know? And I know I'm preaching to the choir, not only to you, but to anyone listening. You know, these people, Congress go into Congress, you know, on a very basic salary, and they all come out on the other end, millionaires or billionaires. You know, we know exactly what's going on. It's such a sham. You know, I'm very disappointed sometimes to be American. As much as I love my country and as much as I love this flag behind me and people like you know, Colonel Adams, our military members, our police officers, there are times when I sit back and I think, my God, you know, what are we doing to our own people? And what are we doing to the other people of the world?
Well, I never thought I would get to a point in my life to understand that our government is corrupt, period. And we have to do something about that. We have to go back. We got one hope. You know, I'm glad I'm still alive in this time because to see what's happening. We have a chance, and the odds are against us of turning this whole thing around. The
Yes,
odds are against us. And if something happens to Donald Trump,
it's all over.
This country's in big trouble.
It's all over. Something happens to him, it's Colonel Adams, it's all over. I don't know what we'll do. I guess we'll have to, you know, go hide out in our bunker for a while because that will be probably the only option.
You hide in your attic like that one lady told me, you know. So anyway, again, the Muslims are very quiet. Now, also, reason I wore this hat today, Hegseth said supposedly in a drunk conversation, the only good Muslim is a dead Muslim. You know why he said that? Because he just came back from a war, an Islamist war, fighting and seeing American troops killed because of Islam. Now, if that would turn somebody against that, you know, if it wasn't for the Islamic regimes over there, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Well, exactly. I don't agree with his statement. I don't believe that I don't believe that philosophy. I know Muslims. I know some great people who are of the Muslim faith who, you know, are absolutely wonderful people. But yet I also see the flip side of it, and I would never again agree with that philosophy. But look at again what happened in Syria, where we just have this situation where we have a group of people who in world domination is the only goal they have. We are all infidels, as you know, and these people, it's happening here in the United States. We have Muslims coming into our country, Muslims that are already here in our country, people who were even born here. And it starts out with a mosque, and they have their imam that becomes a jihadist, becomes an extremist, and then they start recruiting people in their neighborhood and in their mosque. And the next thing you know, we have a terror cell, you know, and it just continues to build like a snowball. And it does worry me. I don't agree with the philosophy, but I'm very much, I hope that we can figure out a way to end the extremism, to end the recruitment. I don't see it happening though. I see it growing. It's a movement that's growing, and it's terrifying to me personally.
No, I think in the future we'll go to war with Islam within the United States. Period. And if they don't like what I say, I could care less. So anyway, that's part of the reason that the Washington Guard was established for internal conflicts in this country. There's not enough police, not enough military around to protect your families. So anyway, that's a whole nother topic.
It is, and one we should talk about again, because you know, while I don't agree with the philosophy, I do agree with you that there will at some point be a war in this country. If we don't end up with a war with Russia, we will end up in a war, which will basically be, you know, any other religion against Muslims, because as they continue to recruit new jihadis and the extremism continues to grow, at some point it will take over.
That's why they're here. And I have my own personal feelings I mostly keep to myself, but I'm telling you right now, we'll have a war within these boundaries, United States, against Islam. That's why they're here. A lot of them are here to be, you know, for run quick trips or whatever, but
right.
They're very quiet, and they mask what they're doing by calling it a religion. And based on the United States, freedom of religion, right? When people finally figure out that Islam is not a religion, it's an ideology, then it's a different ballgame. So,
Right.
and I hate to
It makes
be Dr. Doom again, but we got bad times coming after we straighten out the United States. Then we're going to have to deal with the internal problem.
Will we ever straighten out the United States?
Yeah.
That's another question.
And I just saw where 90% of the federal workers work from home. Is that true?
94%.
You don't see a problem in that?
Yeah, I talked about it a couple weeks, actually. Colonel Adams, a couple weeks ago, I talked about exactly that, because we have Elon Musk saying, you know what, we're spending billions of dollars on these government buildings, keeping them air conditioned in the summer, heated in the winter, and the maintenance and the upkeep and paying people to clean them. And there's no one there.
Yeah,
There's absolutely no one there.
Almost $9 billion a year to maintain these properties and the leases. If I was going out of business, I'm going to sell my employees home, when I try to get out of the lease and say lease it to somebody else, no, they keep paying. But that's the swamp doing it. That's all swamp.
It is. I'm thinking we all need government jobs, but I was just reading. I was going to talk about it yesterday, and I never did get around to it, and I'm not going to really get into it today. But I was reading about government jobs, and a lot of these folks working for our government branches, working for home, they're making $300,000 a year.
Yeah. Oh, I got one for you. So I had a meeting at the White House, right? So I'm up in Washington for, I guess, 3 days, long weekend. So I got to meet with Nancy Pelosi on another issue, right? Well, she's not there, and nobody else is there. And they got a little secretary there. And I said, "What's the chance of meeting with Nancy?" "Well, she's not in town." Blah 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 blah. I said, "Well, who's second in command?" "Well, they're not here." "Well, who's third in command?" "Well, they're not here." I said, "Is anybody in command?" She goes, "No, I'm just answering the phones." Really? I go to Mitch McConnell's office. Same thing. I was supposed to speak with him because people don't know this. Mitch is almost, I hate to call it a hobby, but it's preoccupied with Burma. Now, I was a colonel in the Burmese army and a trainer of the student revolutionary groups, the Democrat Alliance Burma Army. And I thought he would enjoy that there is actually Americans who made a difference in that war. So he's not around. Nobody's around. One girl, right? Nobody's around. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. Then, this is the best one. I had a document about Burma and some other things, and I had already given out several copies of it. So I asked the girl in Pelosi's office, "Do you have a Xerox machine where I can make some copies and leave this for Pelosi," right? She goes, "Oh, just take it down the hall, make your first left, and that's the Xerox room. They'll print it for you." Here it comes. So myself and my friend go down there. One guy, 20 Xerox machines, sitting at the desk, reading a book. I said, "Hey, could you do me a favor? I got these documents for Pelosi. Will you make me some copies?" And Mitch McConnell. "Oh, sure." So he's standing around, and I said, "Anybody else work here?" He goes, "Yeah, there's 5 of us." I said, "Where's the other 4?" "Well, they're home today, working from home." I go, "How do you Xerox from home?" So, it gets worse. So I was looking to get what can I say? Some kind of, my friend is connected to Donald Trump Jr. So I went to DHS, Department of Homeland Security, which is a big office space, a lot of square footage. I don't know how it just continue on down the hall. It's huge, right? There was nobody in DHS's headquarters. No one. I walked through DHS headquarters, cubicle after cubicle, office after office, and "Hello, anybody here?" This is on a Friday. "Anybody here?" That was a Thursday. Nobody. So I finally find one little girl who comes out. She says, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know anybody was here. I'm answering the phones out front." "Oh, well," I said, "Well, here's why we're here for this operation." And there was nobody there. Now, but here's my point. This was before COVID. This is not after COVID or during COVID. So this stuff about these people working at home, there's nobody there before COVID. Now, during COVID, different scenario. Post COVID, trying to recover, right? No. Before COVID, this has
More
been going
government
on
waste
for that long. So
well
3 days.
I think their days working at home are numbered.
Yeah. So, and we're on a, so I said, this is terrible. Let's just go to the White House. So we're going to the White House, and I get about 2 blocks from the White House in some crazy. So the White House is right in front of me. We're walking up the gate and identify ourselves. And I told my partner, I said, hey, Mark, something's going on. He goes, what do you mean? I go, something's going on. He goes, what do you mean? I go, look at the roof of the White House. See those characters up there? Getting in position. Those are snipers. So my trip to the White House was canceled because they had an active shooter. Turns out a homeless guy blew his brains out the gate. So it's
Oh my gosh.
So I spent 3 days in DC doing nothing. But I did enjoy staying at the Watergate. And we got a private tour where all the bugging took place in the Watergate break-ins and everything. So that was kind of fun. But anyway,
That would be interesting to see.
I got nothing done. I met with nobody. I saw nobody before COVID.
That is crazy. Just another example of government waste. I have no doubt that Trump and, of course, Vivek Ramaswamy and, of course, Elon Musk, they're going to wipe right through it all. We're going to take that 36 trillion in debt and hopefully reduce it by cutting out all of this ridiculous spending and all of the aid to countries that never gets to the folks it belongs to.
Yeah, if nothing else, I made a comment the other day to somebody on some radio show or something that right now the prices of shredders have went way up, and somebody said something about the shreddings and stuff and during the Iran Contra thing, and I go, yeah, where's Fawn Hall when you need her? So do you remember what Fawn Hall was?
I do not.
She was
I remember the name.
Yeah, well, it was funny because she was Colonel Oliver North's secretary, and as soon as the Iran Contra thing started, they had shredding parties 24 hours, and even Fawn got to the point where she was smuggling documents out of the NSA in her dress. So that was Fawn Hall. She was never brought up on charges. So where's Fawn Hall? And a lot of people are looking for Fawn Halls right now because these people is going to be called on the carpet about these jobs. There's some shredding going on, believe me.
There is no question about it. They've been seeing shredders at different buildings around the White House.
Yeah. Yeah.
No question.
Shredding trucks, right? Yeah, especially the Biden crime family. Anyway, so I've got to get. Oh, I think they're paying. Well, so the 2023 came out that the Biden administration has spent $150.7 billion on the illegals. The problem with that is that's just in 2023.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
That. Yeah. Anyway, and don't even get me started on this these pardons that Biden's got, because I say every morning when I get up, what's he going to do today to make things worse? And his handlers have got to be going like, how did he get out? How did he get out in that African trip? What a joke that was. Yeah.
I played a video from that yesterday. He was asleep. I mean, it's insane. It's embarrassing. And remember how they talked about Trump and how Trump was embarrassing? Trump was fantastic. Joe Biden is embarrassing. The man is asleep at a meeting and they're trying to talk to him and everybody just kind of looks around and laughs because they all know. It's like such a joke. It's sad.
Why is he even making decisions? I mean, this is just.
I hope he's not.
He just think about it. He's still in power. And they let him out at time to time, so he's still dangerous. Okay, I got to go. We had fun this morning. I'm sorry about laughing at death, but anyway, I've laughed at worse things.
Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, Colonel Adams.
I know one thing. Ha ha, France. Ha ha, France. Because I hate France to begin with. Anyway,
Macron is going down.
Let him. Who needs?
He'll be forced to. He'll be forced to step down. If not today, I would probably say by Monday. I don't think he has any options left. And he deserves it. He's destroyed France.
What happened to the sanctions on oil and gas coming out of Russia? What happened to that? That's the number one commodity. And what happened to the sanctions? According to, as of this morning, all the sanctions were either lifted or never existed. So what is that all about? And be careful, Germany's in big trouble. I'll let you think about that one. See you
They
next.
are in big trouble. We're all in big trouble. Colonel Adams, thank you. Thank
I
you
have
so
to get
much.
to the office. I have to get back to the office. I'm in my wife's office, by the way. That's why the cats are her cats, not mine.
Oh, okay.
I would never own a cat. Anyway, so anyway, thanks for having me. It's been fun. If you need me next Wednesday, I'm available or whatever. Okay. Thank you very much. And bye, people.
Thank you, Colonel Adams. Thank you so much for joining us. That's Colonel Joe Adams of the Washington Guard. You can reach out to them at patriots@thewashingtonguard.com if you want to email them. Check out the website, washingtonguard.com. I love having Colonel Joe join the show because, he's a good guy. He's out there doing what he needs to do, not only for his community, but for all of us, even the folks outside of Franklin County. He's absolutely fantastic. And I love to hear his input on different subjects. He's got such a way about him of getting the message across, and he's done so much for people. If you're interested, if you're fearful about what's going on in the world right now, I know there are so many people that are. I'll get messages from people who say, gosh, I don't know what to do. I'm very worried that we're going to end up in a war, here in the United States. I'm worried about my family that might be overseas. I've gotten a lot of different types of messages, and a lot of people don't know how to prepare. They don't know what to do. And I always say, reach out to Colonel Joe Adams. All you have to do is look up the website, washingtonguard.com. And they are not a sponsor of the show. I'm not getting paid a single cent from the Washington Guard. I just, enjoy having Colonel Adams on. Of course, his wife, Deanna, was on one week as well. Good people. So a couple of things I want to go over, and I know I'm running over time, but it's a podcast. There's no time limits on podcasts. We can just talk about anything we want, can't we? I talked about Tucker Carlson's interview. So for some of you, if you didn't start out with me at the beginning of the show, you can go back and we talked about that a little bit. Again, the biggest points coming out of the Tucker Carlson interview was that the Minister of Defense, of course, Sergei Lavrov, stated very plainly, very clearly that they will not lose in Russia. They will not lose. They are willing to do whatever is necessary. They hope for diplomacy. They hope to talk to Trump, of course, upon a Trump inauguration and work things out diplomatically. But they fired that Oreshnik missile into Ukraine for a reason. It was a warning shot, which most of us knew that it was. And that they want to make sure that Americans know that, no, we here in the mainland in the United States, we're not safe. If a war breaks out between the United States and Russia, we here in the United States absolutely will be involved. So do not think that we cannot have a nuclear weapon strike here in the United States. Don't think that they can't send an Oreshnik missile here to the United States, because according to Lavrov, they certainly can. So you can go back and listen to a lot of that. As a matter of fact, today, Putin, he is in a meeting with a lot of different folks in Minsk. He's there to discuss the situation in Syria and how they can potentially overcome the situation that's in Syria, keep Assad in power, bring back the terrorists back into Idlib, or potentially eliminate them altogether. That's going to be a situation that's going to be unfolding every single day. Things are kind of quieting down right now in Ukraine simply because Zelensky, I think, knows he's lost. The world knows he's lost. We can keep sending money and weapons, but the bigger thing that's coming out of this right now with Ukraine, and then I'm going to go back and talk about the shooter in New York City, because we didn't get to cover all of the details about that. But first, I just wanted to add in that this situation in Syria is escalating very rapidly. China, Russia have asked all of their citizens to leave Syria, and Iran, the same, asked all of their citizens to leave Syria because it's getting ready to go down. I don't know what's going to happen, but Russia will not allow these terrorists to win in Syria. They won't. They can't. And so therefore, they're going to pull out all stops. We're going to see some heavy military action, I believe, in Syria over the coming days. The terrorists, al-Nusra, some of these other groups, they're not going to negotiate. There's going to be no diplomacy. Russia's going to do what they have to do to save the Syrian citizens, to keep the country from becoming a democracy, as we in the United States, our wokeism culture wants to call it. which of course is anything but democracy. So keep an eye on that. They're going to determine today how their battle plan will be. But by Russia and China and all these other countries asking their citizens to leave Syria, I think we know what comes next. So keep an eye on that situation. Something I want to throw in there, Speaker Mike Johnson has stated he wants to defund Planned Parenthood, and they're going to write an executive order to defund Planned Parenthood. I know liberals are going to absolutely lose their minds. My thoughts are that the government shouldn't be funding Planned Parenthood. It shouldn't be the government's responsibility to fund Planned Parenthood. Absolutely not. I am 100% for that. Teach abstinence and birth control over abortion. Too many people, 460 something, 480,000 abortions every year. It's insane. Teach abstinence and birth control over abortion. That's my thoughts on that. The Financial Times, they apologize to their readers for downplaying Bitcoin because all of these years, Financial Times have always said, oh, you're not going to win any money. It's a sham. You're going to lose money, blah, blah, blah. Well, now that it's hit 103,000, their readers are demanding accountability. So they made a statement that said that they regret not adequately considering the crypto's potential for long-term value and transformative impact on global finance. I don't know about you guys, but remember, gosh, I feel like such a dummy right now. I remember when Bitcoin was like $30 a share. Do you remember that? $40 a share. I bought some when it was less than 10 cents a share. But unfortunately, I can't find it. That's a story for another day. So that's something to talk about another time. But I thought that was interesting. The Financial Times, of course, apologizing. Something I definitely want to talk about. We have to talk about that situation, even if for just a few moments, that's taking place in New York City with the shooter, of course, shooting and killing, ambushing the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson. We talked about it a little bit with Colonel Joe Adams. I want to talk about it a little bit more because there's so much more information. I can guarantee you there's probably more information that has unfolded since I've been on the show. And for the record, if anybody is listening, I can't see your comments. So I apologize. I don't know what happened today. Facebook gave me a severe reprimand yesterday for playing the video of the shooting despite the fact that I gave a warning ahead of time that it would be graphic. My show is not live today on Facebook. I'm not sure if it ever will be again. We'll have to figure that out. But you can see the show on X. You can see the show on Telegram or on YouTube until YouTube takes me down. They'll probably be next. So I'm relying on X. But for whatever reason, I can't see your comments. So I do apologize for that. So something I wanted to get over with this situation with Brian Thompson, it is a United Healthcare, man, they're a terrible company. They are a terrible company. They use an AI program to process claims. And whenever 2 people passed away a year ago because of denied claims, they didn't receive the treatment that they were slated to receive, that their doctors recommended and approved, United Healthcare denied it. Well, these 2 families sued United Healthcare. This was exactly a year ago. And what came out of that case is that United Healthcare uses this AI program. And what's so crazy about this is I talked about this on a show a year ago because I have all my Facebook posts from it talking about this exact same thing a year ago when these cases took place. Because if you're like me, it's so upsetting what the health insurance industry is doing to American people. It's so upsetting. And then when you hear about these situations where they don't even have the decency to have a live person go through claims, they have an AI program going through claims. When it went to court, they determined that AI program, it had a 90% error rate, 90% of errors. And the reason why I'm hearing that some of these words came out, if you guys remember, they had the words delay, deny, defend. Some people say, well, that's because there was a book written by that name, and there was. The author of that book is Jay Feinman, and he wrote a book talking about the insurance industry and how the insurance industry will do anything they can to deny your claim. And they will tie it up in court, they'll tie it up in appeals, and then in the end, they never pay out. And so that's why he wrote the book. Now, whether or not the engraving on the bullets has anything to do with that book, we don't know. but we know the bullet casings did say, again, it said delay, deny, defend. But what I'm hearing is that's a very common term within the insurance industry. And that is why Jay Feynman titled his book this. So the actions of engraving these terms on the bullet casings may have absolutely nothing to do with the book. Same premise, maybe nothing to do with the book, but these are very common terms within the insurance industry. So some of the things that we're finding out about the shooter is that he had made a trip previously. I don't have the exact dates, but he had come to New York City previously and stayed at one of these hostel. Am I saying that right? Hostel. And he'd stayed at one of these places, and they know that he was there. How they know he was there, I don't know. Maybe he stayed at the same place that he did this time. But they do know that he was in New York once before, and they believe that he was there to scout out New York City to potentially plan this shooting. Right now, of course, it's being investigated, still a lot up for speculation. But some of the other information that's been recovered yesterday, police raided the hostel where this gentleman was staying, the suspect was staying, and he had used a fake ID in a New Jersey fake ID to check in. And at one point that he did lower his mask, and I don't know, my show is not very friendly when it comes to pulling up images, but I'm going to try to pull up this image here. Oh, there we go. That is the shooting suspect there. What he's doing here is at this hostel, and he's talking to a female employee and she claimed and told investigators that they were kind of flirting back and forth. And that is when he had his mask pulled down. And she said that the majority of the time that he was there, he did keep his mask on. But a lot of people were questioning, why does he look different? Why does he have different clothing on? I mean, that's a different jacket. There's one look. That's a black jacket with a gray backpack. Here, he has let me flip back and forth. I guess not. In the other photo, he had on kind of a green jacket with a black backpack. So a lot of people were wondering, well, it can't be the same guy because he has different clothing. Well, it turns out he checked in on November 30th. So he's been in town for quite some time now. He didn't just come into town, commit this act and then leave, and he didn't live there, presumably. And what he did do is they do know, or they have released, that he was seen in Atlanta at a bus station. He took a bus from Atlanta into New York City, presumably on November 30th. He checked into this hostel. And just like Colonel Adams said, it appears that he has his items in the backpack. We don't know what he has. We don't know what he's been up to. Obviously, he's there and scoping out the area, planning his attack. But again, my biggest questions are, he had a burner phone. Why did he need a burner phone? Who was he talking to on a burner phone? If this is just some random guy who's upset over United Healthcare's policies, maybe he was denied a claim, maybe a family member of his had a claim denied. Well, why does he need a burner phone? Who is he on the other end talking to? Because you only need a burner phone if you're communicating with someone and you don't want anyone to know you've communicated with them, right? Or, well, there could be a flip side to that too. Let's say if he was trying to be stealth and not take his cell phone, because everywhere you go, your cell phone tracks you. And believe it or not, even if you turn your cell phone off, your cell phone still tracks you. Some of the buttons on your phone, when you turn, let's say, your location devices off or your location services, your cell phone still tracks you. Your cell phone always knows where you are. And so the only way to avoid your cell phone knowing where you're going is to not bring it. So it's possible that this guy left his cell phone at home, wherever he may live, and took the burner phone to communicate back and forth. I don't know. I can only speculate. But he had a burner phone. I think we have to ask why. Now, they have not been able to access his burner phone as of yet, as of late last night. It had a passcode. They haven't been able to get into it. They continue to try. I haven't heard if they found any fingerprints on the cell phone or not. The DNA, they're trying to test the DNA on the water bottle and on the power bar wrappers. The fingerprint they did remove from the water bottle, it was smudged and unusable, is what I am being told. So that's some of the evidence they're looking at. If they are able to take DNA from the water bottle, then guess what? They're going to be able to make an arrest rather quickly. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if I leave this show and I find out that they've already made an arrest, or if they make an arrest later today. It depends on if they find that DNA. Now, if they have to go back, let's say to a group, if you're familiar with them, called Parabon Nanolabs, what Parabon Nanolabs does is if you've been part of 23andMe or Ancestry.com and you have sent in your DNA, well, guess what? Your DNA is there and it's usable to law enforcement. So let's say the investigators in this case, they take the DNA, they don't find a match in CODIS or some of the other VICAP, some of the other systems law enforcement uses to trace potential, suspects. Well, then what they'll do is they'll send their DNA into Parabon Nanolabs. From there, Parabon Nanolabs will take that DNA, they'll process it. There's two different things they can do with the sequencing. One is they can test the DNA for characteristics. They will be able to tell, well, what color of hair does this person have? What do they look like? But in this case, we already know what he looks like. So I don't think any of that is necessary, but it is a very easy test for them to do. The second part of this is that they will, of course, run his DNA through the genealogy database. And let's say he's not in there, he's never sent his DNA into one of these testing centers, but let's say maybe his distant cousin has, his third cousin, fourth cousin, it doesn't really matter. Well, there is a family tree built for you, for each one of us, in these DNA databases. And so therefore, they'll immediately say, okay, well, this suspect DNA matches this person way down the, some rabbit hole in the family tree. Well, then they'll continue to test that DNA sequence up the ladder until they can finally reach the person on that family tree that is probably the parents or the siblings of the suspect. From there, they'll go and investigate that family. Let's say it might be the brother, it might be a sister, it might be the parents, it might be an aunt or an uncle. They'll investigate the family until they narrow down the most likely person that this DNA belongs to. They'll take their trash, they'll look at their phone records. They'll be conducting this huge investigation behind the scenes until they nail it down. And trust me, that's exactly what they will do. They've caught many, for some of you who know, some of you don't know, I have written a crime blog for several years now, and I'm very familiar with Parabon Nanolabs and DNA technology and genome sequencing and all of that type of thing. And they've solved hundreds of cases at this point, cold cases, by doing this. So if we can find DNA on that water bottle or on those wrappers or on that phone, and DNA can be a lot of different things. It can be oil from your fingerprints. It can be saliva. He might be talking on that phone and spit while he's talking, and that saliva will be on the phone. A water bottle, that's pretty obvious, but there's touch DNA. If they find something that he has touched, maybe even the bullets, something you touch, they can pull DNA off of that, touch DNA, and have that sequence. So there's a lot of possibilities here. Law enforcement and technology has come a long way. So I will absolutely expect an arrest in this case. But some of the things that I thought were interesting, though, again, not so much about the shooter, but more about Brian Thompson himself. He was separated from his wife at the time of the shooting. They were no longer together. And I'm not sure, I haven't heard any speculation as to why that is or what took place or for how long they had been separated. We know that not only did Brian Thompson sell his stock options for around $15 million prior to that antitrust probe begin. Of course, he did that along with all of his executives. Some of his executives took a lot more money than he did. He got about 15 million. And this is a guy who made, I think his base salary was like 1.2 million. Then he got another, I think it was like 8 million, something along those lines, in incentives for his job. In total, I believe his total income was right around 9.5 million, something like that per year. But some of these executives that worked under him, they got like $88 million in stock options, that they were able to sell. So this is much bigger than just Brian Thompson. There's a lot of people involved in this antitrust probe. There are a lot of people who profited from United Healthcare. So it's much bigger, I think, than just this one guy. And we talked with Colonel Joe Adams about the possibility of it being a hitman, excuse me, a professional hit. If it was, obviously this guy clearly didn't do a good job. You don't leave the burner phone behind. You don't leave a water bottle behind. You don't leave power bar wrappers behind. You don't get your photo taken on camera. But the twist is, and I want you guys to think about this. The twist is we know these days you can do such a big fake on people. I don't know what other term to use. He could have been wearing a mask for all we know. That may not be what he looks like. I know Jamie Ullman commented on a Facebook page of mine yesterday, which you guys know Jamie Ullman from the Ullman Report. And he said, well, what if the guy's wearing a prosthetic nose? Because if you look at some of these photos, I don't know if it'll let me pull this other one up. My computer is very funny when it comes to photos. And of course it's not going to, but you can see here that his nose is very prominent. And so is he wearing a prosthetic nose? If you look at that top image, I mean, his nose is very large there. And that would certainly be a feature that would throw law enforcement off. Now, what if he brought a burner phone that had someone else's DNA on it? What if he bought that water bottle and switched it and threw one away that had someone else's DNA on it? There's so many different things that could happen if this guy is a professional, if this was a professional hit. Because we have to ask ourselves, if this is just some random guy, why does he need a burner phone? Why was he there on a prior trip to check out the scene, check out the area? How did he know? How did he know to be at that hotel at that time? It wasn't like he was waiting out there for hours. He very methodically got up that day, got his Starbucks, headed over, stood on the side of the building on the phone. He's on the phone as he walks towards this building. And then Brian Thompson comes out and he approaches him and shoots him. Very calculated. So it's a very strange case, a very strange and perplexing case. And these days, we've all talked about these scenarios in which, the government, they know who we are. They have our DNA, they have our images in all of these different, systems, facial recognition systems. How do we know that this isn't just some big plan to kill this guy from United Healthcare and blame it on someone else? And I know that's completely going down a different rabbit hole. And I always try to remind myself that the simplest answer is typically going to be what resolves the case, the simplest answer. And the simplest answer, of course, is that this is just some random guy and that he is upset about insurance claim denied and that he took it upon himself to do the research and find out where Brian Thompson was going to be and maybe use the burner phone to call the hotel to ask for him. There's a lot of weirdness though. That's the simplest answer. In this particular case, I don't think the simplest answer is the answer, but how far down the rabbit hole we go, I don't know. I do know that Jamie Adams today, Joe Adams that we talked to earlier, Jamie Ullman on his show tonight, the Ullman Report, he is going to be talking about this case in depth. He mentioned that he does think it's possible that this suspect is wearing a prosthetic nose. It certainly seems possible if you look at this guy's nose. I mean, that doesn't really seem real. And if you look at the other picture of the guy, I mean, if this guy's there in New York to murder someone, murder a rival, or if he's been hired to do that, a person is never going to let their guard down. He would be able to see this camera. He would know that camera was there. He's not going to let his guard down and take his mask down unless it was intentional. So there's a lot going into this case, and I think there's a lot more information we're going to find out. And if it is legitimate, I know what we're all going to do already. When this guy's finally arrested, we're all going to be like, what is going on? And we're all going to see something probably into it that we're not seeing right now. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. And it's kind of crazy to me that people are celebrating the death of Brian Thompson. I am with the rest of you. I hate the insurance companies. I do. I can't stand their policies, the things they've done to people, particularly the most vulnerable people, elderly people. They deny a lot of claims for elderly people. I saw a claim, a letter that a doctor had written to United Healthcare. I have a copy of that. And on that letter, it was a doctor saying, you guys are a bunch of idiots. Here at United Healthcare, you denied a claim for a child, a young child that was getting chemotherapy treatments for cancer. This doctor prescribed this child nausea medication, anti-nausea medication, And United Healthcare, they denied the claim, and they said, we see no evidence that cancer causes nausea. Therefore, we're not going to cover this nausea medication. Seeing things like this, it makes me sick. Hearing stories that elderly people have passed away because their claims for services were denied. It worries me. It worries me because my own stepfather, who I am a part-time caretaker of, is on hospice, and guess what? He has United Healthcare. He just switched to United Healthcare a couple weeks ago, so now I'm a little worried about that. There's a lot of possibilities here, but I hope that we don't martyr the guy, whoever he might be, whatever his reasons might be. I personally feel like this situation is a lot less about healthcare claims and a lot more about stock options being sold. But you know what? We'll see. We'll see how it works out. But again, I just want to tell everybody, if you missed the beginning of the show, definitely go back, listen to Colonel Joe Adams with the Washington Guards. We're talking a lot about Syria, about Russia, about illegals, and about migration, and a lot of other things. And we'll continue to talk about this. We'll talk about Muslims in the United States. I absolutely do not agree with the philosophy that we need to do away with all Muslims. I think there's a lot of Muslims out there who are really good people. I think that I think it's unfortunate that terrorists, extremists, just like there are extremists on every side, they do honestly kill more Muslims than they kill any other people. But these people who are extremists, who are jihadists, they are out to dominate the world. And at some point, we are going to have to face these people right here in our own country. And I hate it for the good Muslim people who are not part of any extremism, who believe in the right side. And it's more than I'm going to get into now at the end of the show. But keep in mind, there's two factions to the Muslims. There's the Sunni Muslim and there's the Shiite Muslim. And the Sunni Muslim, 99% of all terror groups in the world are Sunni Muslim. And then we have the Shiite Muslims, that would be Hezbollah and Hamas, and Hezbollah kind of goes back and forth. Hamas, of course, some of the people in Syria are Shiites. Saddam Hussein was a Christian Arab. Assad is a Christian Arab. More than I can, again, a much longer, complex discussion. But we, the United States, we always end up funding the terrorists every single time. We fund the Sunni terror groups. We fight the Shiite groups. I'm not going to call them terror groups, but we do fight them. And it's a very convoluted, complex situation that's taking place in the world. So we'll keep on top of that in future shows. I don't know what's going to happen on Monday. I don't know if I'm going to be back on Facebook. Either way, I prefer you watch the show on X. Either way, YouTube, my time there is limited. I think I've got one strike left. We'll see how that plays out. But it is Friday. I do hope all of you have a really fantastic weekend. I'll be posting, as I always do, onto social media, letting everybody know what's going on as things progress. And they will progress in Syria. They absolutely will be progressing in Syria. We're about to see a major escalation take place in Syria. So we'll see how that plays out and if it affects us here in the United States. But I do hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. If you like the show, share the show. If you don't have an X account, make sure you create one. YouTube's okay. My time there is limited. All of our time there is limited. But again, have a good weekend, and I will see you guys all on Monday. I am Tabitha with Tabs on Tap, and I forgot to switch the camera back, but here I am.